From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Focused on the future.
You know, you coming along and you see a deer or a fawn or something like that, or you see a group of ducks fly in and feed. To me, that's pretty cool.
Meet a farmer who is building conservation into everything he does. What the White House has to say about expanding E15 year-round.
In the menu of options.
As oil prices began to move back down.
You know, it's not just oil, it's wheat, it's corn, right?
What it means for prices at the pump as potential new problems loom on the horizon. That's right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. After moving well above $100 per barrel earlier this month, oil prices are finally on their way back down. And that is slowly starting to reflect at prices at the pump. AAA now putting the national average at $4.30 a gallon. That's down 2 cents from Monday, with oil now down to around $96 a barrel. The first time it has dipped below $100 since March 1st. The drop, a result, traders say, because of new COVID lockdowns in China, along with possible progress in the talks between Russia and Ukraine.
Oil kind of leading the way. And you know, it's not just oil, it's wheat, it's corn, right? It's everything that was involved with this Russia-Ukraine situation that we had seen speculators jump into a market and really, I mean, push prices to where we can argue probably we don't need to get there yet. We didn't see any supply problems yet. Sure, it could create that down the road, but looking at things right now, it was more of this speculative just jump in and run.
But President Biden is not happy about the slow drop in prices at the pump, sharing this graphic comparing oil and gas prices, saying the last time oil was $96 a barrel, gas was $3.62 a gallon. Tweeting out, quote, oil and gas companies shouldn't pad their profits at the expense of hardworking Americans, end quote. And problems may loom on the horizon. The International Energy Agency cutting global oil demand due to what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. It's warning that sanctions against Moscow over its invasion of Ukraine could spark what it calls a global supply shock. In its monthly report, IEA saying, quote, faced with what could turn into the biggest supply crisis in decades, global energy markets are at a crossroads. The agency said 3 million barrels per day of Russian oil and products may not find their way to market starting next month. Now, what about year-round E15? Could that help lower prices at the pump? The White House press secretary asked about that earlier this week.
A bipartisan group of lawmakers have called on the White House to lift the ban of summer sales of gasoline with higher blends of ethanol. It's cheaper than traditional blends of gasoline. Is that something, you mentioned a menu of options, but is that something specifically that the White House is considering?
In the menu of options.
Energy Information Administration data analyzed by the Renewable Fuels Association says that ethanol stocks grew by 2.7% recently to almost 26 million barrels. That's the largest reserves since April of 2020. In other news, the EPA taking steps to try and prevent drift by adding further restrictions on the use of over-the-top dicamba for broadleaf weeds in Minnesota and Iowa. The agency saying in a release the revised labeling means the cutoff date in Minnesota is June 12th, south of I-94, and no spraying after June 30th, north of I-94. There are also temperature restrictions. In Iowa, the cutoff date is June 20th. The change comes after EPA said it received about 3,500 dicamba-related incident reports last year. That includes 711 reports in Minnesota and 528 in Iowa. Nearly 7 million chickens and turkeys in 13 states have now been killed this year due to avian influenza. In Iowa, state and federal officials are hoping the disease won't spread as extensively as during an outbreak back in 2015. That's when about 50 million chickens and turkeys died, causing egg and meat prices to soar. Now, scientists are confident that wild birds are spreading the disease, but they're still unsure how the virus infects commercial flocks in highly secure barns. Research from 2015 suggests the virus can be tracked inside on equipment, workers, mice, small birds, and even dust particles. Now, spring is just around the corner, and that means weather changes are on the way. Meteorologist Maggie Rasavik joins us with more on some rain and snow for the heartland.
Yeah, that's right, Clinton. We've got more rain and even some snow on the way, but also temperatures on the cooler side back behind this system, and already starting to see those cooler temperatures in the upper Midwest and across the northern tier, with temperatures in the 30s this morning. Later on this afternoon, still 60s and 70s out ahead of that stationary front. But again, that cooler air going to be crashing in as we head over the next couple of days, especially in the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes. Looking at the actual system itself, still back in the Rockies, bringing some mountain snow, but it's going to be moving its way right across places like Oklahoma and Kansas, bringing rain to the east, snow to the west. That system's going to move right on up into the Great Lakes and the Midwest, bringing a little swath of snow to the west, and then some heavier rain and even a few thunderstorms across the Ohio Valley and into the Great Lakes as we head through the next couple of days. And a lot of rain associated with this, a lot of moisture there. Between 1 and 2 inches of rain could be possible in some isolated spots. So more of that rain on the way, and then next week, more rain for the west. And check out this amazing sunrise. Aaron McCain of Cornland, Illinois. Aaron always seems to capture something spectacular in the skies over Cornland. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
USDA will allow 3 pork plants to increase processing line speeds this month. They are the Clemens Food Group in Hatfield, Pennsylvania, Quality Pork Processors in Austin, Minnesota, and Whole Stone Farms Cooperative in Fremont, Nebraska. The 3 will be part of a pilot program. Plants approved for the trial program will be able to operate at faster speeds for up to a year, and they're supposed to collect information on how the line speeds affect workers. It comes after a federal judge struck down a 2019 rule that removed line speed limits. Still ahead, looking beyond Russia and Ukraine, we dive into the other pressures weighing on the markets right now. And we continue our focus on farmers and conservation. Meet a farmer who is taking care of the land in an effort to leave it better for the next generation in the country. And if you're going to take part in this, you better hurry up. Do it now. You only have until noon today to fill out your bracket in the 2022 Bracket Busters Challenge presented by Case IH. Now, first place receives $1,000. I've done mine. To get your bracket and learn more, head over to agweb.com and look for the Bracket Busters link.
AgDay is brought to you by Germinator Closing Wheels. Germinator, it's not just any closing wheel. Reach your yield potential. Pre-order by March 31st with coupon code AgDay for $2 shipping per wheel.
We're joined today by Steve Georgie with Allendale Incorporated. Steve, as we look at what's going on with the markets here, obviously we've seen quite a bit of volatility. What are the key factors beyond Russia-Ukraine that the market continues to weigh?
Yeah, and this is, we're coming into a time period where we can mention the acreage report, right? But we have to understand that's a planting intentions report. Input costs are high, everything else is high. We all know that. But what's going to happen right now, we see this volatility just between a situation between Russia and Ukraine. What'll happen here when you look at what these forecasters are coming out with, where we could sustain this drier bias into June, July, August again, where not only can we sit there and look at the effects potentially on yield just due to lack of fertilizer, what's going to happen if we don't get that moisture now too? Is that going to be some kind of a perfect storm type number where we get these markets to react and we really see some of this excitement that we've had re-enter the market again? We may be a little early to that party right now, but it is something that we need to pay attention to as we go through these next few months.
Steve, as we know, there are so many questions left unanswered here, and I feel like, a lot of times by the middle of March, we've kind of got things planned out and locked in. But again, we're in kind of unprecedented waters here. How do we manage through that over the next couple of months?
Yeah, and really, we have to understand from a producer standpoint, there is still profitability out there for corn, for beans, for wheat, and that's good. But we have to understand too that what do we do now moving forward? These decisions have to be made. You got to stay non-marginable out there. That's just wiping people out. But finding ways to protect your downside and make sure that you have your profitability locked in. The banker's going to want to see that, and it's just good practices here at this point.
All right, appreciate the insights as always. Thank you much for joining us. We'll be back with more Ag Day coming up in just a minute.
To talk to Steve Georgie one-on-one, call Allendale Incorporated at 800-262-7538 or head online to allendale-inc.com. Find farm equipment on Machinery Pete's March 22nd online auction. No reserve, no buyer fees. Start bidding now at auctions.machinerypete.com. Ag Day weather is brought to you by Zoetis. Even though calves don't wait for perfect weather to arrive, you can count on Zoetis to be there. Share a picture of your newest calf and you could win a calving season survival kit. Enter now at calvingseason.com.
Meteorologist Matt Yurosavik joining us here, taking a look at the root zone moisture map. And Matt, I think it's really obvious how dry it's been really through the Midwest here over the last few weeks.
Yeah, it's been very dry from really the Midwest all the way towards the Pacific coast. Looking, though, to get more rain as we head over the next 10 days. But as you can see, the root zone still very, very dry back in the west and even across parts of the mid-south dealing with drier conditions. And more rain is expected over the next 10 days. Maybe we'll get some of that right before we get into planting there through the middle of the country. One more dose of some rain could do some good there across Kansas, Nebraska, even up into Iowa as well. Still very damp, though, here across Middle Tennessee and even down towards the Mississippi River Valley as well. I'm still seeing some dry patches over towards the East Coast as well. But again, more precipitation expected over the next 10 days. Some of that coming in the form of mountain snow back here in the west. Denver seeing some of that as we head through Thursday morning. And then this system still plaguing the East Coast, moving up the east though, with some of that rain and even some thunderstorm activity. As this system slowly gets on out of here, high pressure replaces it, bringing in the brighter skies. But then we've got this system forming across the middle of the country. That's going to bring some showers, some thunderstorms, especially across Arkansas, down towards Memphis and even into Mississippi and eventually Tennessee. Meanwhile, could see a little swath of snow there on the northern side. As we head through the day on Friday, the system really starts to wrap up. It'll be breezy, cooler air coming in on the backside, warmer air out ahead of that system, thunderstorms coming up into parts of the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes, and then a little bit of snow mixing in on the backside of that system. And you can really see the warmth out ahead of this system, nearing 80 degrees in Tulsa and St. Louis this afternoon. But then again, slowly starting to pull that warmer air to the east and replace it with those cooler temperatures there back to the west. And you can see that by tomorrow afternoon, mid-80s in Florida. We've got 60s out ahead of this system, but 40s and 50s back on the backside of that system. Again, some could see a little bit of snow there on the northern side, but most of the snow confined to the higher elevations of the Rockies and back into the Cascades as well. And again, over the next 10 days, expecting to see a lot of moisture. That is this week, and look at next week, even through the middle of the country. Likely to see a lot of moisture associated with this. A very active jet stream pattern is likely to continue, and that's something that we're going to continue to be tracking here on Ag Day over the next 10 days. That's a look around the country. Now let's take a look at the weather where you live. Fort Myers, Florida, increasing sunshine, a high of 83 degrees. Cloudy with a few showers and a high of 52 in Denison, Iowa. And Tucson, Arizona, sunny and mild, a high of 77.
Don't delay. Enter your bracket today to be part of the 2022 Bracket Busters Challenge presented by Case IH. First prize is $1,000, second is $500, and third walks away with $250. Head to AgWeb right now to fill out your bracket.
U.S. beef exports remain red hot. New numbers from January show a continuation of last year's record-breaking run. The U.S. Meat Export Federation reporting January produced another $1 billion month for beef exports. That's the third highest value total on record, totaling more than 119,000 metric tons. That's up 13% from a year ago. January pork exports totaled more than 208,000 metric tons. Now, that's down 16% from a year ago, while export values fell 14% to about $555 million. The organization says exports to Mexico were outstanding. Now, looking ahead, USMEF says forecasting 2022 as a whole is a real challenge right now.
I'm still optimistic for U.S. red meat exports. I still have beef exports setting another record above $10 billion and possibly nearing $11 billion as long as things don't go off the rails. And on the pork side, I think we can still do above $8 billion, and there are a lot of wild cards, especially on the pork side and around not only China, but also what happens in Europe.
Dan Hellstrom of the U.S. Meat Export Federation saying, as expected, the continued rebound in China's pork production has slowed demand for U.S. pork. Canada says it will allow imported beef and pork from Brazil into the country. They had been blocked due to health concerns. Brazil's ag minister meeting with the Canadian Ministry of Agriculture. She had traveled to Canada to speak with potash companies and other fertilizer suppliers. Now, she announced that Brazilian meat packers will now be able to export products to more than 200 markets around the world. The clearance for pork products, however, only extends to one southern Brazilian state. It is the only one recognized to be free of foot and mouth disease without vaccination. All right, water, it's an important element on the farm, and conserving it and using it as efficiently as possible are the focus of one farmer in Tennessee, in the country.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com. The American Soybean Association Conservation Legacy Awards are brought to you by Bayer. Bayer is committed to delivering better solutions for farmers while enabling them to operate more sustainably. Bayer, science for a better life.
No good deed goes unpunished, and for Shane Birchfield of Dyersburg, Tennessee, that's true for conservation. Never without challenges, but always worth the effort. As Shane Birchfield surveys his farm, water is on his mind. Where to get it, how to use it efficiently, and this time of year, he lets it take over a portion of his fields.
We like to do it to attract wildlife.
A fourth-generation farmer, Birchfield manages about 2,000 acres of corn, soybeans, and wheat. As a conservation-minded producer, his father allowed the local extension to plant 30 acres of no-till soybeans on the farm back in the mid-1990s. It worked so well, the farm converted to 100% no-till the following year.
It allows us to plant earlier. It protects the soil from washing away.
Birchfield says a variety of cover crops such as rye, vetch, and turnips also help to keep the soil in place on these gently rolling hills.
If that soil is there and it can hold moisture for a few more days, that might be the difference in 5 or 10 or 15 bushel yield increase.
The farm's use of conservation structures like terraces and catch basins add to the stability of that soil. And even in the battle against weeds, Birchfield finds an upside to his no-till practice.
Evidently, we are the mecca for resistant weeds in this part of the world, starting with the mare's tail several years back, and now the Palmer amaranth. That creates a new set of challenges, but I would still rather deal with that than have to be plowing the ground.
Like his dad, he's an early adopter, not afraid to try new things. Birchfield looks to technology to help increase productivity, such as the use of management zones and prescription seeding.
I think of my dad, like he's seen technology, he's seen the evolution of change. Like when he was a kid, they plowed with a mule to go into combines who operate themselves with automation and guidance and everything else. And I look at where we are today and I think, how can they make it any better? But somehow they do.
A smaller but important part of the farm is the wildlife refuge, where food plots and wooded areas bring welcome visitors.
It provides a habitat for ducks and geese and things like that. We'll leave corn standing or soybean standing. You know, you coming along and you see a deer or a fawn or something like that, or you see a group of ducks fly in and feed. To me, that's pretty cool.
That conservation mindset is central to the Birchfield farm philosophy. Take care of the land and leave it better for the next generation.
It's knowing your role, knowing that you're a steward. This land was here before me, this land will be here after me, so what am I doing in my time that I've got it, that I'm sustaining it, maintaining it, and promoting it for that next generation of people who will come behind me.
All right, now tomorrow we'll meet the winner of this year's ASA Conservation Legacy Awards. And that's all our time for this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.
The American Soybean Association Conservation Legacy Awards are brought to you by Bayer. Bayer is committed to delivering better solutions for farmers while enabling them to operate more sustainably. Bayer, science for a better life.